Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Let me ask you something intimate. Have you ever walked into a room and noticed how certain people, without saying a word, pull everyone's attention toward them like gravity itself? They don't have to be loud. They don't need perfect cheekbones or a designer wardrobe, yet something about them makes you pause, take notice, feel curious, even a little undone. You can't quite put your finger on it, but you feel it. This kind of attraction, it's not about chasing, it's about drawing in, silently, powerfully. And I wonder, when was the last time you felt magnetic? Not because you posted something clever online or wore the right fragrance, but because your presence, your quiet confidence, your grounded energy, your inner clarity spoke before your lips ever did. You see, the most irresistible people don't rely on words. They master the art of the unspoken. Their attractiveness is something you sense, not something they sell. So today, we're not talking about how to impress. We're talking about how to express your worth, your depth, your mystery, without ever needing to explain it. Because real power is silent. And today I'm going to show you how to embody that kind of power. Let's talk about the 12 subtle, socially magnetic habits that make a man silently attractive and unspokenly irresistible. Not flashy, not needy, just unforgettable. There's something deeply erotic about subtlety. And I don't mean erotic in the sexual sense alone. I mean that electric feeling of being drawn to someone's presence, of wanting to lean in closer, not because they asked for attention, but because they earned it simply by being fully rooted in themselves. So let me take you back to a moment. Picture yourself sitting in a cafe, mid-afternoon. Maybe you're sipping coffee, scrolling absently through your phone, half listening to the noise around you. Then someone walks in, not loud, not flashy. They don't even glance around, but their presence shifts something in the room. You notice how they move unhurried, how they look at the barista, directly but gently, how they stand, not trying to take up space, but not afraid to either. And suddenly you feel a pull. That is the essence of silent attraction. It begins with how you carry yourself when no one's watching. The first habit that makes a man silently magnetic isn't posture, it's presence. It's when you're not rushing to prove, to perform, to entertain. You are just here, fully. You listen with your eyes. You stand like your body remembers the shape of dignity. You sit like you have nothing to escape. You speak when you have something to say, not to fill silence, but to honor it. That's not about confidence. It's about self-trust. And when you trust yourself, others begin to trust you. You don't need to announce who you are. You reveal it slowly, naturally. In the way a tree doesn't scream its strength, it just stands rooted and unmoved by the wind. Now let me tell you a little secret about attraction that few people talk about. It's not just about how others see you. It's about how you relate to yourself in the moments between performance, in the quiet, in the stillness. The second habit of silent attraction is emotional composure, not stoicism. Not the brittle armor of, I don't care. No, I'm talking about the quiet grace of a man who knows his emotions but isn't hostage to them. He feels deeply, but he doesn't spill. He lets his feelings inform him, not control him. Let's be honest. There's nothing more unsettling than someone who can't hold their own tension. You feel it, don't you? That nervous energy. The way someone talks too fast, laughs too hard, tries too quickly. It's like watching someone running from themselves. And that energy, it repels. But the man who can sit in discomfort, who doesn't flinch when someone disagrees, who can receive critique without collapsing or counterattacking, that man is rare. That man is seductive. Because when you're not afraid of your own inner weather, you create a shelter for others too. There's this myth that women are attracted to mystery. But let's refine that. It's not mystery in the sense of being unavailable or cold. It's mystery in the sense of restraint, of pacing. A man who doesn't give it all away too soon, who knows that part of intimacy is revelation. And revelation is most powerful when it's earned. He's not hiding. He's just selective. And that brings me to the third habit, controlled vulnerability. Now, that might sound like a contradiction. But stay with me. Vulnerability doesn't mean bleeding on the table. It doesn't mean crying in front of someone you just met to show you're deep. That's not attractive. It's disorienting. Vulnerability, when it's authentic, is calibrated. It's not about exposing every wound. It's about owning your story without asking for validation. A silently attractive man can say, I've been through some things. I've learned from them. And I'm still becoming. That's it. No drama, no theatrics, just truth. And you can feel the strength in that kind of honesty, the kind that comes without apology. And here's where it gets really interesting, because when you don't need others to manage your emotions for you, you become a safe space. That doesn't mean boring, it means solid. And solidity is magnetic in a world that constantly spins. So let me ask you, when you're out in the world, do you rush to fill silence? Do you feel the need to explain yourself too much? Do you try to prove that you're enough rather than being enough? Because the fourth habit I want to draw your attention to is this intentional silence. Silence when it comes from calm rather than insecurity, is captivating. Most people speak to relieve anxiety, but the man who pauses before he answers, who doesn't fear the stillness between sentences, who allows moments to breathe, that man commands attention without demanding it. When you're silent, people lean in. They wonder what you're thinking. They wait for your next word. And in that pause, you become unforgettable, because unlike noise, silence carries weight. And when it's filled with grounded presence, with genuine listening, with still confidence, it becomes irresistible. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. You see, what makes someone attractive isn't just what they say or do. It's the space they create, the emotional space, the energetic space, the space that tells others, I'm not here to chase you. I'm not here to impress you. I'm here to be fully myself. And if you feel safe here, you're welcome to join me. But you have to believe that. You have to live it. And to do that, we begin by slowing down, by observing the way we speak, the way we walk, the way we look into someone's eyes when they speak. Are we trying to impress? Or are we genuinely connecting? And connection doesn't come from trying harder. It comes from trying less, from returning to your center, from remembering that attraction is not performance. It's presence. It's emotional steadiness. It's the art of not trying to be liked, but instead being deeply okay if you're not. And that's where the power lies. When you start living in that stillness, when you stop chasing approval and start embodying calm certainty, something subtle begins to happen. People begin to respect your time, even before you speak. They sense that you're not just present, you're anchored. And people crave anchors in a world of drifting distractions. This is where we move into something that is often overlooked, but it's one of the most silently powerful forces a man can carry: emotional containment. It's the ability to hold a feeling without immediately reacting to it, to let an emotion rise in your body. Anger, sadness, desire, frustration, and not become it. You feel the heat, but you don't throw the flame. That's what makes you safe. That's what makes you strong. Not the absence of emotion, but the discipline of it. A man who can feel rage and not lash out, who can feel desire and not grasp, who can feel loneliness and not collapse. He's magnetic, because he's not a slave to his impulses. He has edges, boundaries, a clear sense of who he is and what he's willing to carry. And that, my friend, is incredibly sexy. This kind of energy, it's subtle but not small. It's the difference between someone who makes you feel overwhelmed and someone who makes you feel held, which brings us to the next layer. If you want to be silently irresistible, you have to master the power of restraint. There is something devastatingly attractive about a man who could speak but doesn't, who could escalate but holds, who could brag but smiles quietly instead. Because restraint is power in its most elegant form. It shows that you are not operating from need, you are operating from choice, and choice is the cornerstone of desire. Let me tell you something very real. Most people overshare not because they want to connect, but because they are acting to be seen. But the man who doesn't scramble to be known, who lets others discover him slowly, who doesn't hand over his entire life story on a first date, that man stirs curiosity, not confusion, not manipulation, just curiosity. He knows that real intimacy is a slow burn. That being intriguing is not the same as being withholding. It's about leaving enough mystery to let someone imagine, but enough truth to let them trust. And when you practice this, when you resist the urge to spill everything, to fix everything, to be everything, you become a sanctuary. You give others space to breathe, to wonder, to feel drawn in. But none of this works if it's rooted in performance, which is why the next habit, the one that ties it all together, is self-honesty. A silently attractive man is not trying to be perfect. He's trying to be real. He's done the work of looking at himself, the beautiful, the bruised, the broken, and he carries all of it with dignity. He doesn't need others to validate him because he's already accepted himself. And let me be clear, self-honesty isn't just about knowing your flaws. It's about being responsible for how they show up in your relationships. It's about saying, I know where I'm still learning, and I take ownership of how I move. That's not weakness, that's maturity. And maturity is deeply, deeply attractive. There's something calming about being with someone who isn't pretending to be further along than they are, who doesn't posture, who doesn't perform. Just a man standing in his truth, not needing to impress you, but inviting you to witness him. You see, so many men are told to either dominate or disappear, but silent attractiveness lives in neither. It lives in integrity, in showing up aligned, honest, grounded, no masks, no show, just substance. And that substance is what creates emotional safety. Emotional safety isn't about saying the right things. It's about being the right thing, being consistent, being someone who listens to understand, not to reply, being someone who doesn't shame others for their vulnerability, being someone who knows how to say, I see you, without needing to fix or change or control. When a woman feels emotionally safe with you, she opens, she softens, she lets herself unfold because she knows she won't be judged, mocked, or mishandled. And you know how rare that is? Do you know how much of a gift that is? It makes you unforgettable, not because you chased, not because you said the perfect line, but because you gave someone the gift of being themselves in your presence. And that, my love, is a kind of intimacy most people have never known. So I want to ask you something. When you're with someone, do they feel more relaxed or more anxious? Do they feel seen or sized up? Do you really listen or do you wait for your turn to speak? Because the answers to those questions will tell you everything you need to know about your silent impact. And that brings me to something deeply human. We all want to be wanted. We all want to be chosen. But here's the paradox. The more you need to be chosen, the less magnetic you become. Neediness isn't about affection. It's about identity. Which is why the next habit is this: having a life you're in love with. When you are fulfilled, when your days are rich with purpose, when your nights are full of friends, when your soul is nourished, you don't need attention. You attract it. You glow differently because you're not waiting for someone to complete you. You're already whole. And that kind of wholeness is rare. It says, you're welcome here, but I'm not empty without you. It's not cold. It's not distant. It's deeply inviting, but not dependent. When you love your life, your work, your rituals, your solitude, you stop chasing and you start choosing. You begin to operate from desire instead of desperation. And that shift, that's the beginning of true attractiveness. Because now every connection becomes a bonus, not a rescue. You're no longer trying to be impressive. You're simply expressing the life you already love and letting others witness it. That's what people remember. That's what people feel. They may not remember your words, but they will remember your presence. They will remember how they felt sitting across from you. Whether they were pulled into your calm, your clarity, your steadiness, or whether they felt like they were just another mirror you needed to feel seen in. So ask yourself, is your life so rich, so anchored, that love becomes a welcome addition, not a missing piece? Because when you reach that point, your silence speaks louder than any pickup line ever could. When you fall in love with your own life, you stop waiting. You stop performing. You stop needing others to write your story for you. And you start to live truly, wholly, deliciously in your own skin. But here's what most people forget. Being attractive isn't just about being strong or self-contained. It's also about how you move through the world, how you interact with the everyday. It's about your sensuality, not the overt, performative kind, but the quiet, grounded awareness of your body and the world around you. Which leads me to another deeply magnetic habit: embodied presence. When a man is in his body, truly in it, you can feel it. In the way he touches the glass as he picks it up, in the way he exhales when he speaks, in the way he walks, measured, intentional, unhurried. He's not rushing through life. He's tasting it. This doesn't mean you need to be a dancer or an athlete. It means you notice you are in your body, not just in your mind. And that embodiment creates a current. You draw people in not because you're trying, but because you're here, fully here, not lost in tomorrow, not stuck in yesterday, here. This presence becomes a dance between you and the world. You begin to savor your movements, your meals, your words. And that savoring, it's intoxicating because people are starving for realness, for presence, for someone who is actually with them when they speak, someone who isn't waiting for the next thing or half absorbed in their phone, the man who makes eye contact, not as a tactic, but as a gift. That man is unforgettable. And that presence makes every interaction feel like intimacy, even the small ones, even the brief ones. But let's go a little deeper still. There's another dimension to silent attraction that can't be faked, bought, or mimicked. It's self-respect. Now, I don't mean arrogance. I don't mean puffed chests or a "don't mess with me" attitude. I mean the quiet assurance of a man who knows his worth and lives in alignment with it. Self-respect is when you don't stay where you're disrespected. It's when you don't chase someone who's not choosing you. It's when you don't lower your standards just to avoid being alone. Because let's be honest, there's nothing less attractive than desperation. And there's nothing more alluring than a man who doesn't need someone, but chooses them consciously from a place of abundance. You see, when you respect yourself, your energy changes. You walk differently. You speak differently. You don't over-explain. You don't apologize for existing. You don't hide your opinions to make others comfortable. You stand in your own values, even when it's inconvenient. And that integrity, it's hot, because it tells people, I am safe, but I am not weak. I am kind, but I am not a doormat. I can love deeply, but not at the cost of my own dignity. That energy doesn't come from trying harder. It comes from knowing yourself and knowing that you are not for everyone, but you are exactly right for the ones who matter. Now, here's something I want you to feel in your bones. When you act like you're disposable, people will treat you that way. But when you carry yourself like your time, your heart, your energy are precious, others begin to treat them that way too. That's not ego, that's sovereignty. And it becomes the foundation for one of the most overlooked traits of quietly magnetic men: emotional leadership. You don't need a title or a position to lead. Leadership, in the relational sense, is about taking emotional responsibility. It's being the calm in the storm, the clarity in confusion, the steady hand when others tremble, a man who can hold space without controlling, Who can invite without demanding? Who can steer the conversation toward depth, not because he's trying to impress, but because shallow no longer satisfies him? That man is irresistible. Because most people don't know how to lead emotionally. They react, they deflect, they numb. But you pause. You choose your response, you own your triggers, you notice your patterns, you model what it means to be an emotionally safe, deeply present, powerfully loving human being. And that changes everything, because leadership isn't about always being right, it's about being responsible. It's about being willing to initiate, to apologize, to clarify, to hold tension when necessary, and to do it all without losing your center. This isn't performative. It's not alpha. It's not manipulation. It's embodiment. It's inner maturity. It's relational depth. You don't need to bark orders or dominate the room to be a leader. Sometimes leadership looks like this. You notice your partner is tense, and instead of taking it personally, you ask softly, is there something you need right now? Or you sense conflict brewing in a conversation, and you choose to de-escalate with grace instead of fueling the fire. That's emotional leadership, and it's powerful because it tells others, you're safe here. I won't disappear when it gets hard. I won't collapse when you need me grounded. And the deeper truth is, when you carry this kind of presence, embodied, anchored, respectful, clear, you become rare, not because you're better, but because you're whole. And wholeness in a fragmented world is rare. People feel it. They don't always know why they're drawn to you, but they are. Because your very presence becomes a kind of invitation, a quiet promise that says, you don't have to perform around me. You can just be. So many people are waiting for someone to make them feel safe. But when you become that person for yourself first and then for others, you become irresistible, not in a loud way, in a sacred way, not the kind of attraction that flares and fades, but the kind that lingers, the kind people remember years later, the kind they compare others to. You don't need to chase that kind of connection. You need to cultivate it by becoming someone who is already living that truth. And that begins with how you treat yourself when no one is watching, how you hold your emotions, how you move through discomfort, how you honor your time, your values, your vision, how you lead, not with force, but with presence. You see, the deepest kind of attraction isn't about being wanted. It's about being respected, even in silence. When you live in that kind of integrity, something sacred happens. You stop bargaining with your worth. You no longer beg for attention with your behavior. You no longer shift for acceptance. And in that stillness, in that quiet knowing, you become the kind of man who doesn't need to convince anyone of anything. He just is. This is the kind of man who understands the next habit of irresistible presence, discernment. In a world that tells you to go after what you want, there's a rare power in a man who knows how to pause and ask, but do I really want this? Does this feed me, stretch me, grow me, or just distract me? A man who knows how to say no, not from fear, but from clarity. That man stands apart. He doesn't follow the crowd. He doesn't date to avoid loneliness. He doesn't surround himself with empty conversations. He is discerning. And in that discernment, his energy becomes sacred. Because here's the truth. Your time is not infinite. Your energy is not a currency to waste. The man who protects his space, not as a defense, but as a form of self-honoring, becomes deeply attractive. Not because he's closed off, but because he's curated. And when people feel that you don't let just anyone in, that you don't say yes to everything or everyone, they begin to value your yes far more. You become someone whose attention means something, whose interest carries weight, not because you play games, but because you have depth, standards, vision. And let me tell you something important. Discernment is not coldness. It's care. It says, I take my life seriously. I take you seriously. So I won't pretend. I won't perform. I won't stay where my soul doesn't feel safe. This is what makes people lean in. Not your performance, not your charm, but your depth, your discernment, your refusal to dilute yourself to be liked. And when you stop diluting, you start magnetizing. That's where the next habit arises. One that is profoundly underestimated in men, but unforgettable when it shows up, a quiet sense of humor. I don't mean the clownish kind. I don't mean jokes that seek attention. I mean the twinkle in your eye, the lightness beneath your strength, the ability to laugh at yourself, not as a way to deflect, but as a way to disarm, to open the room, to remind others, I am whole, but I don't take myself too seriously. This kind of humor, it's soulful. It says, I've seen the dark, and I can still laugh in the light. It creates intimacy through play, not as a mask, but as a mirror. Because in a world heavy with expectation, there is nothing more seductive than a man who can lighten the moment with grace. He doesn't force the laugh, he invites it, with a knowing glance, with a well-timed smirk, with a story that humbles him, not humiliates him. And women feel this. They feel the difference between a man who uses humor to avoid depth and a man who uses it to warm the space around him. The quietly humorous man doesn't chase laughter. He offers it without needing it in return, because he is already at peace with himself. And what is more magnetic than that? This brings us into something sacred. The final habit, the thread that weaves through them all. The one that turns silent attraction into something profound, lasting, and unforgettable. Emotional attunement. You can't fake this. You can't read it in a book and perform it at dinner. You either develop it or you don't. It's the ability to notice, to sense the shift in someone's voice, to feel the pause in their story, to hear not just the words they say, but the emotion behind them. Attunement is presence with depth. It says, I see you, not just your face, not just your body, I see you. When you become attuned, you stop speaking over others. You stop trying to fix everything. You stop waiting for your turn to be interesting. You start leaning in. You start listening for the meaning between the words. You start honoring the emotional music that plays beneath every conversation. And this is where intimacy begins. Because attunement tells someone, I care enough to stay with you here. I won't rush. I won't disappear. I won't dominate. I'll meet you. And here's what's truly beautiful when you live this way. Not perfectly, but intentionally. You become the kind of man people remember. Not because you shouted, but because your silence made them feel heard. Not because you filled the room, but because your grounded presence made space for others to be seen, to be safe, to be drawn in. You don't need to speak loudly to be felt deeply. You don't need to chase to be chosen. You don't need to impress to be remembered. You need only to live in alignment with your values, with your body, with your emotions, to be a man whose energy is clean, whose presence is calm, whose boundaries are clear, whose gaze is warm. A man who listens with curiosity, speaks with restraint, moves with grace, and lives with intention. That man, he doesn't just attract women, he awakens something in them. He becomes a reminder of what's possible, of what it feels like to be around someone who has done the work, and now carries it not as armor, but as elegance. This isn't a performance. This is not a strategy. This is not another game to play. This is you, remembering who you were before the world told you to shout, before the pain made you numb, before the culture taught you to seduce with noise instead of presence. This is the reclamation of your quiet power. And when you live in that truth, you become unshakably irresistible. We often think attraction is something we chase, that we must earn desire through display, through performance, through effort. But what if I told you it's something we cultivate, quietly, gently, over time, not by chasing approval, but by choosing alignment, silent attractiveness? It doesn't shout. It doesn't knock on doors begging to be noticed. It stands in the room and says without a single word, I am here, and I am enough. That's the moment when things begin to change. When people begin to turn toward you without even realizing why. Because your presence starts speaking before your voice ever does. And let's be honest, how many of us have spent years trying to be louder, stronger, more impressive, only to find ourselves exhausted, misunderstood, and still alone? But the man who turns inward first, the one who begins to build strength not on the outside, but in the silence of his decisions, the calm of his gaze, the steadiness of his breath, he becomes the kind of man who doesn't just attract attention, he awakens longing. Because here's what no one tells you. True desire doesn't arise from perfection. It doesn't come from trying to be everything to everyone. It comes from being fully, unapologetically yourself, without the noise. That man is powerful because he's no longer seeking validation. He's seeking connection. Not quantity, quality. Not attention, resonance. There's a kind of beauty that doesn't need filters. A kind of charisma that isn't taught in books. It's felt in the way you walk into a room and meet people's eyes without fear, in the way you ask questions and actually listen, in the way you own your scars without performing them, and you share your victories without needing applause. This isn't just about being attractive to women. This is about being attractive to your own life again. Because when you stop trying to be impressive and start becoming expressive, life moves differently. You stop asking, how can I be liked? And you start asking, how can I be real? And from that place, your silence begins to carry weight. Your stillness becomes your strength. Your presence becomes your seduction. And I want to tell you something. Whoever you are, wherever you are right now, you already have this within you. You don't need to buy something new. You don't need to learn a dozen techniques. You need only to return, to soften, to slow down, to look inward and ask yourself, am I living a life that feels true to me? Am I rooted in values that I admire? Am I speaking from a place of peace? When your answer becomes yes, more often than no, you begin to glow differently. People feel it in your boundaries, in your eyes, in your pauses, in the way you walk away from chaos, not with bitterness, but with dignity. And yes, you will still be misunderstood by some. That is the cost of being deeply authentic. But the ones who feel you, who really see you, they won't be able to forget you, because you'll remind them of something rare, something ancient, something unshakably real. And if you're listening to this, and something inside you is stirring, that ache, that awareness, that this is what I've been looking for, feeling, then don't ignore it. Because this isn't just a video, this is an invitation. To slow down, to ground in, to come home to yourself. Let others chase the noise. Let them post and pose and perform. But you become still. You become clear. You become discerning. You become the kind of man who isn't waiting to be chosen. He already chooses himself every single day. That kind of self-choosing, it's contagious. And one day, someone will look at you, not because you were the loudest, or the flashiest, or the most polished, but because you were the realest. And in your presence, they will feel something they've rarely felt before. Safe, seen, drawn, and they'll wonder, how does this man do that? And the truth is, you don't. You are that. You don't chase attraction. You become it. So breathe, drop your shoulders, slow your words, feel the ground under your feet. And remember, you don't have to prove your worth. You only have to remember it. If this resonated with you, take a moment to let me know. Share a thought, a shift, or even a single word that this video brought up for you in the comments below. I read them all. And if you want to keep growing into this kind of magnetic self, into calm, confident, emotionally rich manhood, subscribe to this channel. Like this video if it stirred something in you. Because we're not here to perform manhood anymore. We're here to embody it. Here's to silent power, to grounded confidence, to irresistible presence. Here's to you, exactly as you are.